What's up, everybody? We're here, Siggraph 2018, and we are on the show floor at the Otoy booth with the man himself, Jules Urbach.
Hi. So good to finally see you face to face and do this thing in person.
So I've got like a million questions. We don't have too much time. Hopefully we can get you on the show pretty soon and talk more in depth on this, but let's talk about first the Octane 4 roadmap.
Well, release candidate 1 just went out a couple of days ago, so we are now feature complete, and other than having bug reports come in, the things that we haven't found, it's basically going to be the stable release. So we're very shortly going to have Octane 3 replaced by V4, hopefully within a month. But you know, it's going to be very similar to when we had release candidates for 308. There's maybe one or two before we decided this is final. So we're pretty much done with V4, other than things that we haven't found in terms of bugs, but everything's in there. Volumetric denoisers in there, light linking. We also added compressed textures, which was a cool feature, which can really squeeze things down. And so yeah, we're also ready now to start looking at the next version of Octane, which we also announced the same day that we put out release candidate 4.
All right, so let's talk about these Rtx cards, because I'm really excited about this, about Octane Bench, about everything that they can do with Octane.
Yeah. So the short answer is that in real-world scenarios, a fully optimized Rtx card could be 3 to 8 times faster than than basically a Titan V or Pascal card. So it's significant. Right now, there's 3 ways that you can leverage ray tracing hardware on the Turing cards. One is through optics, the other is through Vulkan, and the other is with DirectX. And we announced earlier in the year that we actually are working on a new version of Octane's framework in 2019 that has backends for metals we can get on even on the iPad and iPhone. So our Vulkan backend in this version is seeing 10 times the speed of a 1080 on a card that is basically that's basically the replacement for that, or will be at some point. And it's 5 times faster, 6 times faster than a Titan V, 8 times faster than a Titan XP or Pascal 6000. So the speedups are huge. But we haven't completely finished that version of Octane yet. When we do, we will get that full speed, and we'll see probably Octane benches in the 700 or 800s, which would be pretty crazy. And we'll also get Mac and even Intel integrated graphics support along the way. In the interim, optics is still kind of early. The RTX support is not quite as finished as it is in Vulkan or DirectX. So when that happens, since we have a version of Octane that we built, even Octane 4, we have an optics backend now. The second that gets accelerated to the full speed, then we'll see those speeds even in earlier builds of Octane. But we're waiting on NVIDIA to sort of help us sort that out. And I think they know what the issues are. So that's kind of where we're at. Eventually, by next year, we should be seeing 3x the speed minimal on these cards, and maybe more going forward.
So I was looking at the roadmap going forward for Octane 5 and some of these new features. I guess, in a nutshell, what are the best parts of the new features of Octane 5 that you're excited about?
I think the two awesome features are the procedural system for both lights and for scene geometry. And we wanted to have something that was fun to use. Like, I always wanted to be able to take things like have our textures basically just skip the whole idea of vector displacement and just go right into, we can create and sculpt things in the scene. And the way we did is we have had OSL shaders built into Octane since 308, and we extended that to geometry. So you can create fur, you can create spheres, oceans, mountains. You can mess with all that in the node graph, and it's awesome. And there's 0 cost. You don't need to compile that or turn it into triangles. So it can replace a lot of things. It's very powerful, and it's very artist friendly. The other side of that equation is doing the same thing for lighting. So basically, I think you guys were talking about this on a previous interview that we were doing, where doing portal lights or spotlights even. Those things are not possible with Spectron, which is the procedural lighting system. You can create any sort of spotlight or directional light you want. It's so fast to resolve that, because we know what shape the light's supposed to be, that all the rays gather, and it's basically real time in the viewport. And we have things like directional lighting, barn door lighting. Those things are super fast, and that's before we have even AI Light 2, which is designed to make that resolve faster, and the volumetric denoiser. So the procedural lighting, lighting volumetrics are awesome, as are the procedural geometry functionality. And then also we've added things to basically make the realism of Octane go all the way to what the laws of physics allow. So we added fluorescence, you have polarized lighting, you have basically all these different things that allow you to do, and also layered materials, so you can do really complex substrates. There's a new subsurface scattering system and hair system going into the Octane 5 engine going in Octane 2018, and we're also building denoisers just for hair and skin.
Man.
Oh, and vertex attributes as well. That's a big, people wanted that for a long time, so that's going into that next release. it'll be out by the end of the year, and we should have a beta soonish.
I'm so excited to play with that. I'm going to go take a look on this computer over here.
So we're showing at this workstation the very first build of Octane 2018, and it's right now I'd say it's one release away from an XB1, but it's also showing the 2 new procedural systems that we've added to the engine. So the first is Spectron, which is procedural lights. You can see that we can basically control lighting shapes and volumes really fast. And this used to take a long time to get God rays in Octane. Now it's basically 2 seconds. And we're not even turning on the volumetric denoiser. The other thing that we're also showing here is you have a fractal pattern that is pure OSL. And I can actually change this in the shader. I'm just basically changing the power of the mantle, the fractal, and you can see it's affecting the scene instantly. And there's absolutely no geometry needed for these things, either of these, and it's a really, really, really fantastic system. So these new primitive types are really pretty great. There's also, I mean, just the limitations that we don't have anymore are pretty cool. Like this is basically taking just a procedural sphere primitive, and you can mess around with the material, which is what I was showing in that video, where just having a different noise texture and changing it can totally mess with the way that the displaced volume works. This is something that's very hard to do in vector displacement. So any existing texture map can be applied to these procedural materials. And it's not just for doing things like displacement. You can also do things that are Boolean operations and the like. You also have motion blur. So in something like this where we're generating a fractal in motion, which is what we're showing here, when you're moving it around, it increments the time. If we were to change the motion blur or the shutter time, it'll affect the essentially it'll render in with motion blur completely covered in this scenario. And similarly, we can create brand new. I see somebody change the lighting on this. We can basically create things like meta balls, which are totally procedural skinning operations. Super cool. Hair and fur are really straightforward and easy to do. Also with motion blur as well. And it's so changing, for example, the density of this strand primitive is super easy, and it's awesome. And it's completely procedural. So there's 0 triangles used in this for this. Same thing with this water simulation. It's using 0 primitives. And anything that we can also do really good foam shaders now. We're just experimenting with also feeding attributes from the procedural geometry back into the system. So it's still early, but it's really, really cool, and it's looking pretty good. So we're very excited to have all these pieces up and running. So
we really appreciate you being on the Facebook group and everything, and being involved with like the community, because we all love Octane so much. And so if people want to find you online, how can they get a hold of you?
Oh, I'm always on Facebook. I love being part of the Facebook group. It's actually, I think we have 25,000 people in it now. It's awesome. And I love being part of it. I mean, I'm always available there whenever I can to answer questions and to help people out. We also have, of course, our forums, but Facebook's been a really great, these Facebook groups have been a really great way of gathering a lot of collective knowledge together, and I love participating there. So that's all. I'm always available on that Facebook group, and anyone can reach me anytime.
All right, again, from the Siggraph 2018 show floor, just stay tuned. We're going to have a whole bunch more interviews. We'll talk to you later.